these ancient civilizations understood that there was ways that shape had the ability to connect into real life, to use it as a tool to be able to connect into something that they needed to survive. Now, that would have been an example back in that day of how they would have used this technology that we're talking about right now in shape, angle, colors, and things like that that create a particular information or symbology that then correlates into something in real life.
The Becoming Flame podcast broadcasts pure, unfiltered power exchange that stokes the flame of your being. Because it's time to remember. It's time to return. It's time to become flame. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Becoming Flame. Today's episode is something that's really exciting for me personally, just because I've fallen so deeply in love with this woman, and I invited her onto the podcast today, not to talk about energy tools, although you'll definitely learn a lot about energy tools, but really about what happens when women, mothers, refuse to live inside incoherent systems anymore. And this is going to be a conversation about what incoherence, or rather what coherence, actually means at a level where you're designing your body, your home, your community, your life, the ways in which you construct your homes physically and metaphysically around resonance. And I think it's such an important conversation, because already my life and my business Phoenix is really rooted in the language of coherence and this concept of embodied truth or sovereignty, or women as architects of their own life or their own way in which they want to live. And how granular that goes, or how macro that goes, is part of your own personal alignment to your own truth or your own coherence. And it's not just about rewriting your whole life and trying to do that, but it's about really understanding the finessing that you can get in terms of understanding coherence at this very granular level. And biogeometry is something that I personally have started studying, not anywhere near to the degree that our next guest has, but already just these very small, in the grand scheme of things, lessons that I have been incorporating into my life is this incredibly powerful bridge to blend design, balance, resonance, these environmental fields, these personal fields, and this unseen architecture that actually affects living systems and your own coherence in such a way that we really don't understand it. And so for anyone who doesn't know anything at all about biogeometry or what I am talking about, biogeometry is described as the physics of quality. So it uses subtle energy principles of geometric form to bring balance to living systems. Its central concept, and we'll be referring to things to biogeometry as either BG or BG3. So if you don't know what that means, that's going to be what we call biogeometry in this conversation. And it refers to this centering or this balancing quality associated with three energy qualities: the negative green, the higher harmonic ultraviolet, and the higher harmonic gold, which sounds really complicated. And to be honest, it is hard to first get your head around it. But my guest has this incredible capacity to actually make this really simple and really digestible. For me as a founder, and for me as the founder of Phoenix specifically, my deeper question has been, and the way that I've formulated a lot of the company principles, is what would actually happen if women designed their lives, their communities, their businesses, their homes, but most importantly, their bodies and what they put on their bodies and in their bodies around coherence, instead of fixing something, instead of surviving, instead of just masking or putting something over the existing structure. What would actually happen if we changed our systems to coherence? What would that then create in the ripple effect of society? Not just do you have an inner glow, but what actually changes in a society of coherent women? That's something that makes me so excited and intrigued. So let's introduce our guest. This is Kassandra Scardino. She is a healer, a teacher, a community creator, and the founder of Resonance. Resonance is a village vision designed around higher consciousness living, harmonic living, coherent living. These are the words you're going to hear throughout this entire conversation. Her work is about pulling together energy, environment, community, and human transformation. It is about how do we service woman, mother, children, not individually, but how do we design spaces that stop wounding us in the first place, stop putting us as individuals in the first place. And so through her studies in biogeometry and subtle energy systems, through crystallology, through so many other mediums that she's explored and delved deeply into, Cass explores how shape, space, sound, frequency, BG, and intention can actually not just influence the way we live, but can change the entire way in which we approach relating, creating, community, village living. In that, she asks, can we remember our true selves at the center of that? And then out from there, create a village, create a resonant community that actually supports that. And she's going to get into the architecture of how that actually could change. And so this conversation and listening to the brilliance behind resonance and the woman behind it is really going to help you to understand, wow, have we been looking at village or urban planning or town planning or conscious community almost from here's the problem, let's work back, instead of here's the absolute possibility of truth at the center and let's design from there outwards. And that shifts a lot. And you're going to understand a lot more about what I just said through this conversation. So yes, this conversation is about biogeometry. Yes, it's about coherence. Yes, it's even about coherence as rebellion. As like, what if we changed the entire world through coherence? It's a little bit about how we're going to burn down this old architecture of disconnection. But really what we want to focus on is about asking what it actually means to build resonant togetherness, build resonant community, build resonant womanhood, motherhood, village life that actually not only tells the truth through the harmonic resonance that resonance creates, but what does that mean when everyone's in the frequency of being able to feel coherence and truth in their living environment? It's a completely new way of thinking about design and connection and community. And it's also taking all the old principles and saying we don't need them anymore in this new world. How do we start from scratch through these ancient and yet extremely modern scientific tools of resonance and harmonic frequency togetherness? Without further ado, welcome, Cass, to Becoming Flame.
Blessings. Thank you. That was so amazing to witness such an eloquent description. Like I really could not have said it better myself. So thank you. That was quite magical. So yeah, blessings. And yeah, thanks for having me on your podcast. I'm very, very pleased to be here.
Anything you would add to the introduction then? Is there anything I missed that you want to really highlight?
I didn't get that you didn't get? No, definitely not. But I would say that it's definitely one of the hardest things that I've found to give context to, because we have never seen something like this or what you're describing in reality, or at least not in reality at this time in a long time. So, there's been elements of this existence, and I think where I can point reference to is probably Atlantis, because the technology from biogeometry is Atlantean technology that was then adopted by the ancient Egyptians. And the ancient Egyptians used it for creating these amazing temples, like these pyramids that are still not proven by science because it's not using anything that we have in today. And so what we are working with is completely out of this world, but it's also very much the crux of everything that is in existence. So it's very, very big. And I think what we're standing on right now in what's being created with this project and what you've even seen, witnessing how it's affected your product and how you've seen it in action with changing fields or working on complex layers of reality that people don't even understand are coexisting. It's really quite interesting to open up this chapter to humanity where we're opening up a level of consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is biogeometry to you? Like, how do you explain it? What is it in your lived experience, not just in the theoretical? How does it affect your life without having it applied, and then now that you live in this different way? Like, explain it to people in a way that makes sense to a lived experience is my point.
hmm Biogeometry is the language of everything that is in nature. And what that basically means in a nutshell, if we were to look at something simple as a square, and the square formation is something that could be related to a brick. And so if you think of a form of a brick in its psychological perception of what you think of as a brick, it's a foundation to a wall that creates a space that we might live in. And it has this density that comes with the idea of something being in this formation of a brick, which, by the way, we all live in these square looking houses, right? And so if we understand that concept of a square being quite heavy and dense, then if you understand that principle as a language, a lot of the time our energetic field will hold in the home that we live in the energy that we keep on pumping into it, regardless of whether it's something beneficial or detrimental, does not matter. What happens is our home becomes a imprint of everything that we put inside of it and holds that frequency until we do something to shift it or reset it. And so understanding biogeometry is understanding a level that you now have a power to use aspects of energetic language to start changing the way that you and your atmosphere and the way that you bring stuff into your life to work from a level where it's actually good for you or enhancing things that you would be needing, like health, emotions, or even just in general well-being, like spiritual well-being. And it's understanding these languages from a minor level to a major level that can actually absolutely just change everything and anything about you.
How can it change you?
So biogeometry in its core, right, gives you the power to test the quality and the quantity of energy. Now, that in itself doesn't sound particularly amazing, but if you think about in the past how people would relate to something that's shifted, they'd say, "Oh, I feel like something's changed." But how? How has it changed? Did it change something that physically happened to you? Did it change something emotionally? And that became this elusive, like intangible way of understanding something that was happening to a person. And so what biogeometry did is it became a tool to be able to understand directly using the way that biogeometry has been created by Dr. Ibrahim Karim, who's in his background, he's an architect, but he's used his architecture, which is also like a form of shape and color and angle, to come up with a way that depicts certain types of levels of energy from physical, emotional, mental, etheric, levels of etheric, to then be able to test, okay, if this thing is done, how does it shift on these levels? And how can I test whether it's good for me or bad for me? And how much it's changing the quality of certain things, down to a level where it can tell you, well, this is working with this level of a specific frequency based on this type of color. And so color has a resonance, right? Each color, say for example, green or orange, for example. Orange, if you look at things in nature, oranges or papaya have this kind of cleansing ability. If you eat a lot of oranges and papaya, right, they can clear things out. Or if you have things like mint tea, they also have this cleansing ability. And so what biogeometry can do is show you exactly how an object has a specific resonance to colors that then act in a way that have a quality in that particular change in you. And so I could get now a crystal and test my energetic field and see if that crystal is going to work for me. But then I could tell, like using the tools, on what level it's actually going to change. And then when I use it, if I put it in a specific grid that they work with, these specific grids, then it can also shift from a higher level using those particular things. Now, that would be a more advanced level of biogeometry, and that's kind of for somebody not necessarily what they would want to be using biogeometry for. But how I use biogeometry in my own personal life is every time I move to a house, I make sure that all the energetic keys, and this is something that you learn, all the energetic keys in that house are amplified so that that way my home is getting the most beneficial amount of energy in it to support me and to support my children and to support my levels of energy. The other thing is it's also really good for clearing detrimental energy. So it can pick up where there is things that aren't good for you. So Wi-Fi, a lot of the things we don't realize is like every single power outlet, like it leaves a little bit of a lower frequency that's being emitted. And a lot of the time we have these, power outlets right near our heads. Like when we're sleeping, we'll have like a power board with all of our, things plugged into it. And that is sending a really low level that even if you don't think it's actually affecting you, there is an effect. And it's not necessarily just that, it's the constant amount of things that are actually over time building up where our body doesn't ever get a chance to fully drop. And so if you go into nature, because the energy of green is so cleansing and so crisp, you'll feel that drop when you're in nature. And all of a sudden, by the end of the day of just being in that environment where there's no, Wi-Fi frequency and you're feeling that level of the nature in your body, it's like something like clicks and you feel that drop of energy come out of your body. This can create that same drop, but it's a permanent fixture. It literally is the frequency that you're living in constantly.
So how would somebody know if they're, because it's like that fish in the water, right? Like you ask a fish, like, tell me about water, and they can't articulate it, right? It's ever present. How do you start to actually become more acutely aware of a system that's incoherent versus coherent?
That's the big problem, is a lot of the time we've been trained to become incoherence with the incoherent. I've seen that
We're
time
in
and time.
coherence with incoherence. I just want to, it's like almost
Yeah,
confusing. Okay, I got it.
right, right.
Yeah.
And the reason I say we're being trained to be like that is that our children will respond to negative energy, and you might think that obviously they're quite attuned because they're so fresh, right? But I've had parents say, my child can't sleep. And then when I've gone to their house, their child is directly in this negative energetic vortex of things that I've just explained to you, right? And so what's happened is that child is screaming because their body cannot actually go into this incoherence, but we see it as, oh, they're just not sleeping well. And so It could be that there's other things happening, sure, but the problem is that if we let a child stay in that negative energetic field for long enough, it starts to just absorb it and absorb it and absorb it to the point that it becomes normal. It becomes normal to be in this unnormal frequency. And that's what's happening. And it's happening not just to children, it's happening to us with all the low levels of toxicity that are now being implanted around the world, by the way, with the 5G towers, with the chemtrails, with the toxicity in our water, with the way that they've, put in all of the massive smart cities of like people living on top of each other with all this smart tech. It's a not immediate thing that, we don't notice it if it was like from day dot to second, everything's there, we would feel that shift. But because it's so gradual that we become accustomed to something that's not naturally what we're supposed to have in our frequency.
But even without the EMFs and even without all the technology, what you're also saying is we've been so well trained to ignore the impulses and the feedback from our body, even if we did feel it. We're so good at overriding that. We're so good at putting that so low on the list of things to listen to and to honor.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like we'll take a Panadol because I'm feeling I've got a headache coming on, or I'm not sleeping well. I just must have lots on my mind until it turns into something like a cancer, or it turns into something where we are physically debilitated. And then we go, I wonder where that's come from. So
And
you can kind of
and when
see
you
the
say
canary in.
And when you say how I use it in my everyday life, what does that look like? Do you wake up and you have some rituals or some things that you do in the morning? Or is this sort of like as you feel you need to use it? Or is this like a constant practice? Like how does BG actually work for you in your day to day?
It's very plug and play. Like there isn't like, for example, I've got, just to share, I've got one of these mats that I've created using BG principles. I've just got one underneath my computer because even though I've created a way for the Wi-Fi in my computer to be harmonized, which is something that you can do with biogeometry, I use these kind of like cheats, biogeometry cheats, to basically place around wherever it is that I am the way to harmonize something that would be detrimental. So anything that has a Wi-Fi frequency has got a correction. Anywhere that I have food and water has got an amplification of the beneficial. Like I said, any energy key that's in my house has got an amplification of beneficial energy. And so there isn't anything that I'm doing per se every day because that would be hard. And this isn't about being hard. This is actually more about being in harmony. And that's the difference. So when I'm going around and I'm doing a house correction, I say, once I've done this house correction, I might come back and just check to see that everything's working, but then it's done. Like there isn't anything that has to be done after this and it'll last forever. That's like literally what energetic field you're going to be living in. And what will happen after that with people throwing up, having rashes, having dizzy spells, not being able to sleep is actually their body detoxifying from the levels of density that they've just become accustomed to.
So let's make it clear for people who are tuning into this who've never heard of what you're talking about before. What is this talking about? Energy? Is this talking about like geometries in the traditional sense of, patterns and shapes and sacred geometries? Is this like feng shui? Like really break it down, because I'm sure that there's so many people who are trying to click this in their mind about what it is you're talking about, because this is such a sophisticated naming of frequency that exists, whether they believe in it or not. Help people to contextualize how this is not really a woo-woo, like you have to believe in it kind of thing. This is the world that we're living in.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just work with the principles of biogeometry. There's detrimental energy. So this is working from a level, there are things that we know are toxic, right? So things like poison, things that could kill us, that are radioactive, right? And then there's subtle levels that we can't see with our physical eye. We could go into a room and there could be a poisonous gas and we wouldn't see that, but it could still hurt us and kill us. That same concept is the way that we're approaching what biogeometry is doing. It's showing the subtle levels that are coexisting in our reality and then being able to work from a place where we harmonize it using BG, which is a frequency that connects to the centering vibration. Now, the centering vibration is something that has been used from the Egyptians to the Aztec to the Celtic, and you'll find that any sacred spot or any place of worship by ancient civilizations had this centering vibration. One of the things that they share in biogeometry as an example for just, sharing how this technology was used by ancient civilization was to show a cave, right? An Aboriginal cave where there were wall paintings of animals. And in that cave where the wall paintings were, people thought, oh, they were just drawing the animals of the area. But what they didn't notice was that there were these chips in the wall. What was happening in that instance was the people were using the actual shape information of the animal, right? They used the shape of the silhouette of the animal to create a frequency match, right? And then the cave as a shape information goes from a big hole into a smaller area, which then creates this push. It's going from big into small. That actual motion of big to small is creating an energetic push, right? Now, what they were doing is getting their spears or anything that they could use to create a way to weaken that animal, and they were throwing the spears or the boomerangs or their knives at that animal's field. And what that was doing was creating a energetic depletion in the field of the animal that they were going to hunt, using the resonance of this push to be able to weaken the animal, right? So these ancient civilizations understood that there was ways that shape had the ability to connect into real life, to use it as a tool to be able to connect into something that they needed to survive. Now, that would have been an example back in that day of how they would have used this technology that we're talking about right now in shape, angle, colors, and things like that, that create a particular information or symbology that then correlates into something in real life. But what they would do if there was something that would happen where the animal that they would go and hunt, who was now weakened, if that animal went into a specific area and then the animal revitalized. Now, how would they know if the animal revitalized? Was because that back in the times when we were gatherers and hunters, we had more of a sixth sense. We had this ability to read the land, to understand this animal walked through here because I can not only see the footprints, I can perceive the change that's happening because our abilities were so much more attuned. We don't have that anymore. Now, if that animal that they now have weakened in that process with the cave has gone and walked through a patch and then revitalized itself, what they'd actually found was even more precious. They found a power spot. And that power spot is what they would use now to connect into a higher frequency, which they understood as well was part of like how they would connect into higher dimensional beings, because these higher dimensional beings struggle to come down, and us on this level of density find it hard to come up. This is the reason why children are so connected, because they've just come through the portal of creation. So they're the closest link to something that is connected in creation. And it's also why when we become older, we're closer to the death portal, which is also the connection to creation again. So those two time frames is the closest that you'll get to anything that you'll be in that frequency of that field. But anyway, going back to that power spot, they've found something that now they can work with to heal themselves, revitalize themselves. Back in the days, if that power spot was in a well, that well would become a healing well of miraculous powers, because all of a sudden you would drink from this well and it's like cured miracles. But all it's done is given you a vessel of high potent frequencies connected to the centering vibration. And whenever we have detrimental energy or lower frequencies, when we drink that, it's like we're clearing that out of us, right? And so, that's what energetic healers do. They clear the density, or they remove the entity, or they shift that pattern that's happening in our field, because it's lower, right, than our infinite potential. Now, that is kind of the crux of what I guess biogeometry does, is it creates the ability to have access to these higher frequencies, and then also gives us the ability to shift the densities, but make it like that's our field whenever we want it. We don't have to just go to a healer to clear ourselves. We can create an atmosphere in our home, and it can be at that frequency of creation, using the tools that biogeometry has given us to connect into the harmony of the centering vibration.
And one of the things that I think is really interesting about biogeometry compared to maybe let's call them more spiritual tools or intuition or whatever, is that you can actually measure not only the starting point, but the end point and the differential. And you can continue to measure, over time, any changes or enhancements, and have a really clear, I think like in the future, my vision would be that we all know our actual measurements around our coherence. And it's not just based on a feeling or a sluggishness or like this like feeling of like, oh, I'm feeling really tired. And then you have to try to diagnose like, why am I tired? There is actually a technology to give insight in this precise manner that eliminates not just the second guessing of self, but actually eliminates so much of the diagnostic guessing and goes straight into like, this is the core here. This is what needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you can determine where your illness is at down to looking at a chart of a body and using a toothpick to find, using your frequency, French radiesthesia method, to find exactly the points, exactly where that detrimental energy or that negative pull, that's what it looks like, is a anti-clockwise rotation. Wherever there's an anti-clockwise rotation is where the energy is not flowing or is stuck. And you can then redirect it. You can create harmony there so that the illness does not exist anymore. It might not be a straight one-off go. It might be a process, but you can test that process and you can see in real time as it's shifting and staying and stabilizing.
Through your work with this and understanding precision in a very different way, I think I'm going to meander this question because I'm going to ask a very imprecise question about precision. I have really come to learn something very interesting about my system. And it's not that everybody's system operates in coherence in the same way. But my system, for example, it doesn't work in gradients. It works in this like it is or it isn't, almost like binary sense. Whereas when I've been, in connection with somebody else's field and how their system works with coherence, it is more of a gradient thing. And maybe I'm wrong about this as well, and maybe I'm making it up and I'm still learning. But I wanted to sort of get you've measured so many different physical places as well as people, as well as, products. Like you've had such a range of understanding resonance, coherence, harmony in these very tangible ways. What have you and VG is such a precise system as well, and it's so measured and it's so calculated and so scientific. What have you actually learned about what is coherence, and how does it, am I correct that every individual person has a different system and a different way of operating? Or do we as humans actually operate quite universally?
It depends in the context of where you're taking that. So just to put something like super wild, right, out there.
Do it.
Imagine you kind of felt like you had like this Palladian energy or this Syrian energy or this,
I don't have to
you know,
imagine. Let's go forward with that understanding.
yeah, right. Okay. So let's just say like, someone's like, I really think I'm Palladian, but like, or I really feel like I'm angelic, or I really feel like I've got unicorns around me. And I'm like, yeah, cool. All right. Well, let's test that. Okay. How would we test something that, for starters, is something that we've never tangibly seen in real life? With biogeometry, you actually can test it. Now, the reason why you can test it, and this is actually something that I've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years now, with biogeometry, if you think about the centering vibration is creation energy, right? But creation isn't just one frequency. If you think about in ancient India, they've got I don't know how many deities of God, right? And God as a frequency can be the mother, it can be the Kali energy, it can be blah, 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 right? But all of it is God and all of it is a different essence of God, right? Now, if you take that concept, but you know that God is still connected to the centering vibration, so it's still always going to have the frequency of BG3 being the pendulum that picks up the centering vibration. If we know that that has to exist for it to be part of creation, then we can say, okay, well, if someone's taken a photo of a sacred site that says that it's connected to Mother Mary, right? And then I take that photo and I take the centering vibration pendulum, and the pendulum rotates in a clockwise rotation, saying, yes, this actual sacred site has got the centering vibration, but someone has claimed that it's connected to Mother Mary's energy, right? As a deity. Then somebody goes, I've taken a photo, and in the photo is an orb of Mother Mary when I was meditating with her. Okay, because people do that. They take photos of stuff and they say, oh, there's a photo of a unicorn in here. Then I take that specific photo of the Mother Mary orb and I see if the centering vibration is in that. Now, I have two separate pictures. One is of a sacred site with Mother Mary and another one is an orb of Mother Mary. Completely different. One's a physical site, one's an energetic field. There's a different pendulum that when you use it in a specific way and there's two of the same resonance, the pendulum will end up matching. If there's not the same resonance, it won't connect. It could have a percentage, right? There might be like a 25% or, a frequency connection point, but not a full clear frequency connection point. That's a way for you to determine if there is two of the same energetic field that is connected to that particular energy field. And so what I've done is I've collected any type of orb, sacred site that's connected to deities, or even there's a way of harnessing even sound and prayer or words that can connect to, say, like some type of deity. There's a way of putting it into something that you can test it, and then you can find out if they resonate at the same level with the centering vibration as the key. And then there's another tool that's called the BG28, which is 28 points in a circle that connects to the centering vibration. If I find that the actual deity that I've connected into has a connection to some point in that BG28, then I know for a fact that I have connected into the frequency of Mother Mary, or the frequency to a unicorn, or the frequency to Archangel Michael, or a Palladian alien, right? Then I can get a picture of your witness And I can test if your energy connects into this Palladian orb or connects into this Syrian code. And then I can say, yes, you do have Syrian frequencies in you, or yes, you do have a connection to Palladian, or yes, you do have unicorn frequencies in your field. And that's how I do testing of finding out if these higher dimensional beings are either part of your makeup or connected to your makeup.
Wow. But you need to have some kind of photograph or evidence. Like, what if somebody just has a hunch, but they don't have these kinds of photos or tools?
It's not going to be as scientific. We're working from a place where we're testing. So in biogeometry, Dr. Ibrahim Karim and Robert Gilbert would say, if a person asks me a question of like, how do I know this is this? They'd say, test it. There is no way to know. And that's the thing that this takes out the guesswork. The method in biogeometry isn't like this particular testing method that I'm sharing with you of working with these ascended masters or these deities. That's not something that they teach you. In biogeometry, they just teach you how to test. They say, this is how you would test this, or this is how you would test that. But you have free reign to test whatever you want. And because of the past life connection points that I've had to this particular work, it downloaded on how to take it to these levels where it was testing connection points to ascended aspects of what we can access when we understand that these things exist, because everything exists. There is a physicalization of everything in the macro and to the micro, because as above, so below. And so what that basically means is there is something that will have an imprint of itself on the highest level that can be found on this physical plane. We just have to find it and we have to test it and then we have to quantify it. And then what I've done, which is on the next level, is then found all the essences that connect to that ancient being.
What do you mean, essences?
So, for example, I've created a unicorn spray, and that unicorn spray has been tested to find out all of the essential oils, all of the flower essences, all of the crystals that connect in, just the same way as I shared with you. If there's something that holds that same frequency, the pendulum will go left and right. And so, like I said, there is something that's on the physical form that will have the ability to connect to these higher frequency beings, which is what created the rituals of a lot of these ancient civilizations. They didn't just happen to use that particular, flower or happen to use that particular being. It was because there were resonance of that connection, that being, like I said, the beings that are in these higher planes have difficulty coming down and we have difficulty going up. But if we find these power spots and then we find the things that connect to these beings' particular essence, and then we put it onto the power spot and then we chant to them in a specific way that connects into their resonance, we can connect into those beings. And so what I've been able to do is, from testing, find the energetic, let's say, blueprint, right, of unicorns, Archangel Metatron, Archangel Michael, and then test to see what flower essences, what essential oils, what kind of crystals connect directly to those beings, and then put it into a spray that then can shift on multiple levels your frequency to connect into that being.
Incredible. And so if somebody wanted to do this and they wanted to come to you, they would need some kind of a photo or some kind of something that you could test that had evidence of this ink. So whether
No,
they think it's a unicorn, no. So how would you help them test if they were a Syrian or a Pleiadian or a crazy person?
I would
Can I
get their
test if I'm a
photo.
crazy person?
I haven't tested that yet. Never say never. But no, all I need is a photo of you. And then all I would have to do is just check using that pendulum to see what kind of frequency you connect into, what you match with, to see if there is a match. So I haven't
Okay.
done all of the beings like, the Syrians, the Atlanteans, the Palladians, the Arcturians. That's like another form of body of work that I haven't had the chance to go down, but I could test to see whether you connect into the planets that they link to. And if that's a
Mm,
way to define what your frequency is, then I would be able to use that as a small benchmark of where I would start.
okay. Have you tested yourself? Who are you? What kind of alien race are you?
I've actually tested to find out my past life, one of my past lives, like to see whether it was actually me in a past life or not. Just because it's like being confirmed by psychics. But then I was like, okay, well, if that was me in a past life, then I should be able to test because my resonance should still be able to connect into this person. And it did. I still had the same resonance of that spirit or soul from that past life in this carnation.
What did that unlock for you? What does that change for you personally?
Well, it changes the doubt because sometimes when we're like told, oh, you're in your past life, you were this thing. And it's like, yeah, really? Like, how is that even possible? Like, a lot of past life regressions that I've done for clients where they meet their guide, for example, they'll say, I feel like I've got this Native American or I feel really connected to Native Americans for some reason. And then all of a sudden they've got a Native American guide. And then they're like, but how is that even possible? Because I
Or
don't
that's too
know if that's
convenient or like,
real.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah. Is that my
yeah, yeah.
subconscious just creating that? Right?
Mm, mm,
So there
mm.
is a way to test. Like when one of my clients passed away from cancer and her guide, Crazy Horse actually was her guide, one of her guides, and Crazy Horse became one of my guides. And at the time when it happened, I could feel the presence really strongly. And then it was like, oh, well, I could test to see if Crazy Horse is part of my frequency. Unfortunately, there are no depictions of Crazy Horse. But if I had a photo of Crazy Horse, because he's a Native American, very famous Native American symbol, I could test to see if he was connected to me using biogeometry,
Have you tested wombs?
like female wombs.
What other kind of wombs are there? Are
For
there
as in,
male
like, for
wombs?
babies? No, as well, like, I'm just, like, female wombs for, like, baby pregnancy? Like, what are we talking about?
Well, you were just talking about the centering frequency is creation, right? And creation portals on Earth are in wombs. And I was just like, what, like, I'm so curious if you've tested that, if you've had any information about that, like, what does it reveal? What does biogeometry even have to say about that? Yeah, that was more my curiosity about this creation space.
Yeah, so I've not tested wombs, but I've tested birthing pools. So there's ancient birthing pools that are around that would even say, for example, in hospitals, right, where they're birthing children, there is a huge centering vibration because every time we birth, the centering vibration is present.
Of course.
So not particularly wombs. I've tested more spaces that hold that frequency.
Yeah. Okay. And just going back to when you were talking about, health and understanding, what you need to put in your body, what's not good for you. How much has your personal health changed from understanding these principles?
Well, I think one of the things that a lot of people ask me is how do I do all of the stuff that I do? And when I say how do I do all the stuff that I do, it's that my life is very full. And when I'm not complaining about any of the things, but I'm running multiple projects from, creating education systems to working with Indigenous culture to building, community spaces to running new courses that I'm writing up as I'm delivering them, as well as motherhood, right? 2 children under the age of 6. And then doing all of that with the energy level to create it and not feel like it's too much because the systems that are energetically in place are constantly revitalizing my field and supporting me so that I have that capacity to stretch. Because when you
Mm,
see a person that comes into a room that has a very vibrant energetic field, there's a magnetism and there's also this capacity for them to hold, right? And
Yes.
so when you're tested in life because you say, oh, I really want to do, all these big things. And the universe then goes, okay, you want to do all these big things? All right, well, let's just throw in these things that really make you feel like you have to, work for it. It's like those are the tests to see how much we can stretch, right? But instead of stretching, what this does, it supports you. It holds the capacity to be the biggest and most energetic version of yourself. Not saying that that's like an instant reaction. This is like many, many years of me working with this to a point where now it's like a frequency that's in my being. But that's what I would say is the difference, is that it's like your capacity becomes like the biggest shift.
And is that different or the same to how people talk about nervous system capacity?
Same. Yep. Definitely works on the nervous system and is part of the nervous system. It's not like it's just one physical area. It's like emotional, mental, and spiritual.
So what does it mean to be able to hold something in this sense? Is that what you mean by being able to juggle all the different projects? Is it being able to center into your own self no matter what comes? Is it about feeling like, okay, I can take on yet another thing and still be vibrant about it? Like how, I guess people will hear what you're saying and be like, okay, but I thought this was a measurement system or it's a harmony system. How is it now talking about holding more? How can you explain that to any woman who's listening to everything you've just listed of going, yeah, I could have more energy. I could definitely feel better about life. I could have more vitality, but I feel like all I'm doing is holding everything together with sticky tape and glue and, sunshine and rainbows are not part of my reality right now. So like, what does it mean in your language? Because so many people use hold more, have more capacity, expand your capacity, train your nervous system. Like these are so buzzwords at the moment. Like what does that mean in a grounded sense that someone can actually pick that up and go, okay, I can understand that now?
I guess the only way I can share that is in an example for somebody that I did recently. I would say it was a 6-month shift, right? This person was prone to getting sick, really drop at the hat, woke up really sluggish and tired and had really bad sleep, relationship breakdown. Their in work environment was a lot of chaos that, I mean, it was functioning, but it was not like amazing, right? So we did a correction, and in that correction, the harmony of the field meant that the children and the place of her work became so easy that the times of the days when everyone was struggling to transition became like super smooth. To
Mm-hmm.
She started noticing that she wasn't sleeping particularly more. She was only getting small amounts of sleep, but the levels of energy that she had was like way more. So she wasn't getting to like 2 or 3 o'clock and then crashing and burning like really badly to the point where she just passed out on the couch. She was like, oh, I can tidy up and make dinner and spend time with my partner. And the relationship completely shifted. Like they had all of those patterns all of a sudden just kind of dissolved and didn't even equate to anything anymore. Like they just weren't there anymore. To all of a sudden, the plants that she had in the garden that were maybe fruiting 1 or 2 pieces of fruit during a season were now having 20, 25 pieces of fruit in and more extra that she was giving away to the families that she had around her. And that was just a shift in 6 months.
What you're actually highlighting is really important because we talk about abundance and we talk about prosperity very narrowly in our society. We talk about it in your capacity to earn and your capacity to be able to spend that money to circulate money. And it's like this abundance and prosperity is all about money, all about spending, all about circulation when it comes to like earning potential and spending potential. We so rarely talk about abundance in terms of energy potential, in terms of vitality potential, and that abundance of energy, that abundance of capacity. And that's why I really wanted you to talk into this, because I think that so often, especially in female biology, what we can create in our body is enormous. But if our body is not functioning as it should in coherence, it's so hard to start to create those external, tangible outcomes that you're supposed to want. And some people might say, I need $50,000 extra a year to hire a nanny because I'm so burned out. So I need to like increase, I need, and they'll do all these like crazy mathematics in their head. But it's like, okay, well, what is it that you actually want? Well, I actually really want is to be able to spend that time with my own kids because I don't have the energy right now. So I think I have to pay for someone to come in there because I'm burned out. I don't have the capacity. And I love really what this does and what BG does. And maybe it seems like a really like far-fetched example of what I'm just said in terms of like, you need extra money so you can buy a nanny, pay for a nanny so that you take care of your kids when it's your thing that you want to take care of your kids. But people do make those, I'm making the example really obvious for illustrative purposes, but we do get ourselves in these binds and these like, I need to do these 5 extra different things so that I have the result that I ultimately want. And I think what BG and resonance and thinking about harmony at the center of what you're doing requires you to see how idiotic and completely counterintuitive so many of the things that we say we want are to actually what we want. And when you put the harmonics at the center, it's so hard not to see how the equation was incorrectly considered. And then you step back and you're looking at this entire society that's doing things in a very backwards and illogical way because we don't understand the fundamentals of how harmonics actually create a society that we all actually yearn to live in, but we're almost trying to do it around in the wrong way, and the wrong way, and the wrong way, spinning ourselves in these circles, saying that we need XYZ when we really just need A. And A is really, really, really simple and biologically designed for us to have it. And I think that leads us into resonance, but it also leads us into a deeper conversation around how can we actually even strip away the blinders that we have on and come into understanding. It's like what you said at the beginning. We're so coherent to incoherence that sometimes that shift into the equation feels like the hardest part about actually coming back into harmony, coming back into coherence. So how do you approach that with clients? How do you even set that conversation? Because I'm sure that there are some clients that come to you, probably dragged along thinking that everything that you're about to say is complete baloney, nothing that it's going to work. How do you approach it with people who don't believe anything you're saying or that are dragged into and get those results for them?
I usually just say, what have you got to lose? Because a lot of the time people come to me when they've already exhausted all of the other things. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
you can walk away from this and not try, or you could just let the professional do their job.
But I love that you just said that they've tried every other thing and not found any results. Like my dream for this would be, what if this was the first point of call? What if it's like, there's something wrong in my life I need to go and see about my harmonic resonance, my coherence. I need to get measured. Like, how could we shift this mentality? How could we, for anyone who's not ever heard of this before, like, how do we bring them into an opportunity to see something here?
I would go backwards. I would say we all know what's not working because we can feel that in ourselves, that there's something that doesn't feel good. But what's stopping us from achieving what is good is the fact that we haven't found the way from point A to point B. Because there's a lot of people that talk about the problem and encircle the problem and make the problems feel really hard. But there isn't a lot of people that go, oh, well, this is actually kind of, not that bad because I can show you how to get to this point. And you don't really have to do too much to get there either. It's going to be super chill. We just have to get it done. There's not that much education around biogeometry, and there's not many people that have really found it because it isn't something that people are really ready for because they're still circling around the pain point. And so the thing that I do is I just create this point where everything is in harmony and there is really beautiful things happening and flourishing. And people go, what's that? Because it looks really nice. And I don't know what that is just yet, but I'm willing to kind of check it out. And then when they check it out and they go, oh, okay, I don't really know if I still understand this, but what have I got to lose? And then
Mm.
that's how I find is the easiest way to invite them, because I'm not here to push anything on anyone or tell people that this is the way. It's really just about what people are ready to have a look into and find for themselves, because it is pretty simple.
What's your vision that you're holding? Like, you're building this huge shift. Tell people what's your vision for how to use BG to create this different kind of reality, this different way of approaching living.
So Resonance, which is the project that we're talking about, is creating spaces with biogeometry in all aspects of the land, from the food production to the structures of the home, down to even the building materials being harmonized with biogeometry. So normally someone would be like, oh, I don't want to live in a cement building. That's not going to have, a good frequency because cement has this drying, quite dense energy. But when we put biogeometry into it, it no longer holds that energy anymore. It becomes completely connected to the centering vibration. And so even if we walk into this cement building, it's still going to feel good and it's actually going to be beneficial for us. So what Resonance is we're basically creating community spaces. So we're holding workshops where we build structures and teach people how to create these domes that are quite affordable. And well, when I say quite affordable, they cost $5,000 in building materials. So that's quite affordable. And then we implement the biogeometry into it. So then now what we're doing is every time we build something, we're creating a power spot. And that power spot is there for that person that wants to go and live in it, or it might be a community space, or it might be a place of gathering. So now people that don't know how to get in contact with that frequency come to this build and hang out in this community space, and they're starting to feel, oh my gosh, this place is actually nice. And I actually like how I feel when people around me are enjoying this resonance, right? And then the plan is that as we build each community space, the teams that we're building are now becoming proficient in how to build, how to understand this frequency and how it goes into our food production, how to develop new forms of medicinal medicine in this frequency, how to create our water supply in this frequency that they can take home with them. And so they might have these touch points where they get to take it home until the point where there might be some land that's given to us that says, yeah, we're happy for you to just do an exchange and you can build a whole bunch of places. And now everyone that's learnt all these building skills can go and build, and they might not need a 5-bedroom house. They might need a nice granny flat for themselves, or a big granny flat for them and their kids. And they're living in harmonics with the land. They're all working from a place where the food production is so abundant because the plants are connected to the centering vibration. And then when you're eating those herbs, when you're eating those pieces of fruit, it is replenishing you from the highest potential that frequency could possibly hit. And then the water is also holding that frequency. So every time we're drinking, we're also creating that frequency because we're how much percent water, right? So it's those touchstones, every little place that we can find a way to bring it into the way we live around us, the way that we bring things into our body, and the way that we cultivate that creation of frequency. because we are all in alignment with what this vision can do. If we are all living in resonance with a centering vibration, I'm going to put my energy onto that, not onto all of the things that I could, be hating on in this world. So then it gives people a reason to find a place to start putting their energy into something that can change.
Yeah. For me, it comes down to this concept of, in protest, you are still in the same frequency of the thing that you're against. You're still connecting to that. You're only amplifying and maximizing the existence of the thing that you say you do not want to have existence. It's all your energy is going in that. All your consciousness is going on that. You're replicating that and you're speaking it, and you're in that frequency loop. You're in that creation loop. And why I think it's so important that we stop watching these dystopian films about, these apocalyptic, terrible things that are going to happen, and, preparing for these doomsday kind of, collapse of everything, and talking about that and talking about that and talking about that, is when you start to understand that you are a very powerful creator and you take incredible responsibility and accountability for where you put your attention and for where you apply your creation. And especially if you are someone who is in experience of the centering vibration and then out of experience of it, and you understand the difference of how that shifts your reality around you. It's time for women of consciousness and of awareness and of creation potential. And I think this is like a little bit of a reprimand, but like it's also like a wake-up call. And it's like, please take accountability for this. It is time for women who know better to actually start talking about and creating and, in community, in connection, talking about the utopia that we could be creating with our aligned attention, with our aligned action. And I think one of the things that for me strikes me so deeply about you is that these are the conversations that you are trying to, it's like this utopia. Let's break it down. Let's make this really understandable. You do not need as a person $1 million to make this happen. We can do this in this way. And as we develop these skills and as we go down this sovereign path of we are going to make this happen and we are going to create abundance of food, abundance of water, and not just abundance, but actually harmonically charged water, harmonically grown food, harmonic living spaces. And you invite people to live in a community and experience what it's like to live in harmony. You actually cannot for a while imagine what that will be like because we have been out of harmony for too long to project accurately what that change is. And I think this is the point. This is the general point of how you actually shift from I need to do A, B, C, D, 27, letters of the alphabet plus more, plus you're inventing all these new ways to still live out of coherence and still be sick in that and still be running around in that. Because we literally don't know how to put harmony at the center of our lives. And I think that's part of the reason why it's so easy to stay searching for solutions of how I want this, but how do I ever get it done? And it's like, well, first of all, what if you let go of a lot of the how and start thinking about the harmonics? If you can think about the how around harmony and allow your life to be reorganized, I think it's really important what you said earlier of like, and then you might have to be prepared for the detoxification to happen, which is very uncomfortable. And how many people fall off, at that point and go running back to their like what they think is safe or what they think is correct or what they think is their right way. And I think that's the difference between seeking out spirituality and seeking out a higher level of consciousness. You have to inherently be brave enough to break everything around you and know, of course it's breaking. It was broken to start with. I'm simply now experiencing how deeply broken this is, that I didn't allow myself to actually be in the resonance of that brokenness because I was upholding the incoherence before. And so as you walk out of a brokenness, out of like a broken building, like if you were in a building and it was literally on fire, and then all of a sudden you came to and you thought, oh my God, the building's on fire, that means it's a really bad sign. Instead of the building's on fire, I need to walk out of this building. Like, but we don't. And that's why like these metaphors seem so silly, because it's like when you wake up and you say, oh my God, the building's on fire, I've got to stay in this building and try to, put out my little corner of the fire and hope that everyone else like contains their fire and get angry at them when they're not putting out their corner of the fire. It's like, what are you doing? Get out of the burning building. Leave the building. You're literally standing in a burning building telling everybody what they should be doing about their fire.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Leave the building.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge, right? Is that you are going to inhale a bit of smoke, and you are going to potentially get it, pretty hot, but you just weren't noticing it.
I agree. Yeah.
Like
Well,
the way we live in our houses is inherently incoherent to a functioning society of what we all say we want, but we keep upholding it, and we keep doing all these things in these systems that we know make us sick, and keep going for it. And it's like, what are you going to do? What do you choose now?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It's a tricky, we're going through a mass awakening. Like there's just no other way to explain this, because if you took where we are right now to prior to COVID, oh man, we were in a bubble. Like we had zero concept of like what was going to happen. And the level that we lived in back then to now, you could definitely say there's been a density shift. It's like the heaviness, the level of people being like in this sense of like darkness. Like it's not like, people are angry all the time, but like I would say that there's this level of like, oh, it just feels tough. It feels hard. It feels really like, you know, thick to move, right? Now that is something that isn't just on a physical plane. It's not just hard for us to live in a life where we could just go get a job or, go on a holiday and get on a plane and just enjoy ourselves like we did prior to COVID. Everyone was like starting a business, going overseas, doing stuff that was like fun with their family. And now it's like, oh, there's like a law now where, if I'm not in these boxes, I can't go do those things. And we know that that's not right. And yet by doing nothing is actually in compliance. And so you see that same level happening in society where we're living in a time where we could be shifting levels of conscious awareness, and yet we're still dealing with things like competitiveness. Oh, I don't want to share things with you because you might take my clients. What happened to abundance of like everyone can get everything if we're all just like working from this place of like commonality, you know? Oh, I don't like that person. She looks really shiny. She's always looks great. And like she talks about how she's got so many things going on for her, but like I don't have that. And then you're feeling that sense of like, why does she have more than I do? And then it's this frequency that's being created of lack of, I want that, but I'm not getting it. So then I'm upset, and that's what I'm going to project. And yet I'm saying like this is available to everybody. But the instant reaction is, why don't I have? So we're dealing with levels of intense human evolution from a place where there is the most heaviness on this planet. What does that actually mean? We have the capacity to lift to the highest level of our consciousness, the fastest that we've ever been able to, right? We're considered the new age psychics. We could have at our fingertips any information around the world that we never used to have, like even 20 years ago at our fingertips. That is a huge power, right? Same with the information. And yet, what are we doing in a train station? You'll see everyone like this. Nobody's talking to each other and going, oh, wow, what project do you do? Oh, that looks like a really cool event. Do you want to go to that thing? We're like this. And what is that doing? It's doing this. It's creating this field of like, I'm no longer here anymore. And so in one way, we have so much potential, and then in another way, it is being blocked on every single level.
And then on the next layer, you've got all the EMF interference at an energetic field level. But the other thing from a physical perspective is like you're literally changing. And I've spoken to chiropractors who are like, people's spines have changed. And from an antenna perspective, from an energy flow perspective, from like even a yogic or, biological technology perspective, like the spine and the structure of your spine and your ability to hold, going back to your point about capacity as well, altering your spine alters your body's ability to hold more because it's not correctly supported, right? How do you actually see or expect the world to shift if we were all able to put harmony and holding of resonance at the center? For how obsessed with money and creating money and, all of that, if we became that obsessed with holding ourselves coherently, what do you think would actually happen in the world? Like, what would it look like?
The effects of what you're talking about, if I was to define them in terms of what would shift, when we navigate from a place of centering, yeah, and make that our priority, it's not as if we couldn't earn lots of money. It's not as if we couldn't take our kids to the same private school. It's not saying that we wouldn't be able to even wear nice jewelry. It's just that what we would be doing in those instances of living in a place with really nice things is that all of the space would be holding a frequency that allows us to not get sick as much as we would, to connect with the people that are around us from a place where we're feeling emotionally supported and not coming from a place where everything feels like a struggle. We would have capacity to learn more things because the levels of our brain waves would be learning from a capacity that allows us to evolve into higher awareness. The relationships that we have around us would be more connected, more intimate. So regardless of what that looks like, for me, abundance and prosperity comes down to the levels that we can connect into ourselves and those around us. That's what would be the biggest shift.
Do you think we would naturally start making different decisions though?
Yeah. It's not to say that
Have you?
well, I mean, I live my life in purpose to creating this space because it's like that whole saying, like, what's the point in living in like a utopia if you're the only person there, right? Like, if I live in this amazing bubble, it's great. Like, I'm supporting my children through some really tricky times in this world and emotions that are really tricky too. Supported myself, I might not have all of the time to go out and party, but when I'm actually ready to go and spend time with people, I can go and do it because I'm not drained. I'm not exhausted. I'm not like going, just can't do it. There's the capacity. So that's the ability to make better choices, is that we haven't got this thing where we're drowning, we're actually swimming.
And the difference as well, I suppose, is that while you are making better choices and you're not concerned about lower consciousness issues that don't actually exist, you're no longer interacting with other people who are doing that, even if you're not, which impacts you anyway. So like, if you don't believe in competition, you believe in the abundance of the world, but everyone around you is believing in competition and scarcity and like dog eat dog, all of this, you can't really enjoy your consciousness. You can't enjoy the choices that you're able to make because nobody's there with you. And they're like, and that frequency of the collective has an impact surely on your own system anyway. And so you have to put more energy into, would you have to put more energy into maintaining your frequency, or does the BG like do that for you, or do you still have to input?
Well, for clarity's sake, like being on this frequency doesn't mean that I don't feel fear or that I don't feel competitiveness or I don't feel guilt. It's like those things still exist, but the level of grip that they have on me don't have the same capacity to debilitate. So there is a level that it moves through and you recalibrate. And that's the difference, right? It's like the multiply square. The more people that come into this frequency, the stronger it becomes. And so the whole point is like the more places that we can hold this frequency and the more people we can bring into that, the stronger it becomes.
You're kind of tapping into something that you and I have spoken about at a different point, which is like, how much energy are you actually putting into your so-called spiritual awakening versus stepping out of that completely and accessing a consciousness that, sits above that. And I think that's sort of like the difference between maybe, an initial spiritual awakening where you come into this essence of like, almost like that initial arrogance that you have of like, oh my God, I'm so much better than everyone else now. Like I'm so woke. I'm so loving. I'm so compassionate. And then, it takes a lot of time and energy to go through all your processes and shift through all your triggers and like hold space for people and like, maintain this like facade of wokeness. Like that's a lot of energy that goes into that. And like, then you come out of that, you go through, however many X number of spiritual awakenings after that. And then you come to this point where you're like, fuck spirituality, right? Like this, no, like I'm so over this. Like I'm actually interested in the workings of, infinite creation and like what you're talking about, like when you're getting into like, instead of like having a feeling that, or an intuitive like nudge that I'm this, that, or the other, it's like, who cares? I'm not going to put my energy into like my intuition being right or doubting myself or trying to find all of these like workarounds into like, am I this or not? It's like, here's a technology that I can use that is available to me, that is part of a system that actually amplifies my capacity. So instead of putting all my energy into that, I'm now going to use the technology available. And it's kind of like, are you going to mill flour by hand, or are you going to use an industrial process to do it? Like you're not a better farmer because you're milling your flour by hand. You're serving more people by using the technology that's available to you, because you can grow more, you can mill more, you can nourish more
Yeah.
people. And I feel like we're at this point in time of like, are you going to use technology that's available to amplify your biotechnology and the systems that actually support you? Or are you going to try to keep milling the flour by hand and like put all your time and energy into like justifying these nudges? Or are you going to like, I measured that, it's correct, I don't have to doubt myself anymore, move on to the next question? Like, I've got bigger things to worry about than, was I a Pleiadian? And like, how much time and energy are you putting into these things that ultimately don't shift the needle and create, like, we have to think about what is the primary purpose of this specific point in time in history. Is it to know if you're a Pleiadian or a Syrian or like a unit? No. It's like, if that's an interesting thing for you and you can unlock that technology and that information, here we go. And you can unlock that and
Mm.
use that. Great. That's amazing. Now that's information. But if it's just to know, to tell your woke friends that you're a Pleiadian and that you like, and that's where it's staying, you're milling flour by hand. Like, how are you now serving at this higher level with this information? And that's the difference, I think, in many ways between spiritual conversations and consciousness conversations. Conscious people are here to shift something, to do something. We've come at a very specific time. You know you're here for a reason. If you don't know your reason, then you need to use technology to access that so you can feel any form of self-doubt or hesitation or just going over the same thing. Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? It's like, no, we got to move forward now. This is the time to act. We don't have that much time to affect the shift that's happening here. And like, this is the time. This is the facilitation point right now. And this is a technology that facilitates a greater security and confidence in self because it's a precise measurement. You don't have to second guess yourself anymore. You don't have to override your intuition anymore. You don't have, it's a way, in my experience, it's a way to eliminate any energy leaks that arise through self-doubt, second guessing, questioning, like, is it that or was it? Because it's so precise, you could trust it. Like, I think it's the difference between me saying I would really like to go and study a particular subject. I'm going to go and use the Dewey Decimal System to look up the references that I may need to find. I don't know the Dewey Decimal System. Let me go and learn that first. Actually, they don't use it in the libraries anymore. Now I have to go. And you're like in, like always like learning these new systems that are outdated.
Yeah.
Whereas BG, it's like, this is both a deeply ancient and deeply futuristic system that is as real as measuring gravity. We don't question that gravity exists because we can see it, and we can see it only because something is affected, right? And so subtle energies are the same thing. You can only see it because something is affected. It's only that you haven't had language around that before. And so you've been in these loops of second guessing, questioning, doubling over, going down these endless like searches just to go, oh, that technology doesn't exist anymore, or that system doesn't exist anymore, or that's been outdated, or that's been upgraded, and so it really is like you're starting your information search through the Dewey Decimal System only to find out it's been replaced by another thing and been replaced by another thing, because what it's been replaced with isn't truth. It's an approximation of truth, whereas the physics of quality is a truth-based system as real as how this universe exists. And now we have measurements to put language to that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it is a science. It's not just a spiritual kind of like channel. Like, there's a big difference between my human having something channel through me and go, I'm going to write this down, because there's still this human that gets in the way, right? Not to say that there aren't beautiful humans out there, but there's still the humanness that gets in the way of like what I'm going to share is coming from my filter, my experience, and my way of seeing the lens of this world. Biogeometry has absolutely zero aspects of that. Zero. Because there is no room. Well, look, you can create your own version if you want to trump the system. But if you're testing things the way that you're being taught to test it, it's not coming from a place of like, I want this. It's coming from a place of the field. Yeah. And so the energetic field either is or is not something. So there is no room for it to be gray, right? And what I love about biogeometry, and I'm laughing because it's kind of like funny, humans love to know about themselves. We love to get the psychic readings. We love to get the horoscopes. We love to get all of those things that tell us about ourselves because we are genuinely curious as a nature, right? And we're trying to understand ourselves. What I love about biogeometry is it allows for that selfishness to come into field because you are learning about yourself, but you're learning the true context of yourself, not this version that's coming from a lens of somebody's perspective. It's coming from a biological system that is being tested from all levels to help determine what is actually going on and how you can create the best version of that. And that's what's so beautiful. It actually has a way to allow us to be that best version without any of like the, oh, I've done this many mantras and oh, I've sat on this mountain and oh, I'm part of this group that wears all white. Oh, whatever's your jam is your jam. This is just about getting the job done, like you said, allowing the consciousness to be the lead.
And there's another huge big difference between this as a support tool for higher consciousness and access to higher intelligence versus spirituality. In spirituality, you hear a lot about ease and effortlessness and like they're ungrounded. Like you can feel that someone's just saying those words. And you're like, you don't have ease in your life. Like I can feel it. Like you're not telling the truth. Like it's not real. But you can't validate that other than with a feeling. What BG and BG3 opens is exactly like you said it right at the beginning of the call is like, no, I set it up and it's a structure that just now exists and it just holds that and it's an harmonic field and I can calibrate back into that and it holds me and I'm not doing all the things every day because that would be really hard and onerous. This is literally a system that actually exists in ease. Like it's a different thing than just like purporting that we need to be in ease and effortlessness, whereas what harmony does is shows you that it actually is and that you are or aren't in alignment with that. Like it holds itself. Like a harmonic field is never going to come down to your unharmonic field and be like, hey, so listen, I know things are really hard for you right now and you're trying your best and maybe I could come and like sit in this victim mindset with you and and then like gradually we can no, it's like harmonic or not. You align or you don't. And the preciseness of that actually becomes your very, very best friend when you get out of victim consciousness. Because it is now this quick, like, I'm not in, like, I am now my own sovereign, like, arbitrator of whether I'm living in harmony, in coherence or not. Because if I'm not, it's on me and I know how to, get back into that. Whereas spirituality gives you a lot of excuses and you have a lot of opportunity to sabotage yourself, play a victim card. You can play that violin for the rest of your life by standing behind beautiful vocabularies and all these well wishes. And there's no system of precision to hold you accountable to that.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the key of like what we can't spend time in anymore. And it's interesting because the way I navigate those past feelings of what used to be like this feeling of like, oh, this is so hard, or oh, this is so heavy. Now it's actually just indifferent. And the indifference doesn't come from a place of like elitism or, a power over anyone. It actually comes from a place of like, I see that you're still stuck in that paradigm. And what I can do is either play into that paradigm or I can just stay here where I am and let you do what you need to do. And when you want to cross over, I'll be here. So I'm not going to carry you. I'm not going to make you wrong. I'm not going to judge you or blame you. I'm just going to stay in my lane. And that's the indifference.
What if you find yourself playing into, like, how do you keep yourself accountable? How do you notice even?
There will be those strong feelings and most of the time it will be that, okay, that is not serving me. So I have a choice to either stay or I have a choice to move out of that. And that's where I have to take my accountability as a human and
Mm.
and sit sometimes with those icky feelings and make that like a choice to be like, okay, this doesn't feel nice. I feel guilt. I feel shame. I feel angry. I feel, things that sometimes people don't think that they're allowed to feel. Or, that if they do
Mm.
feel those things, does that mean that's who I am? The difference between where I was before was I would judge myself and then stay in a loop of constantly re-listening to that pattern. Whereas now I'll be like, okay, that's come up, but I don't have that part of me that relates to that aspect of myself from a place where that's how I define myself. I don't define myself as that. And it might be something that someone else might project, but that's not the reality I'm creating from. And so I have two choices. I can either accept that reality that they want to project or that the false lens is trying to create, or I can focus on the place that I want to create and make the reality based on those choices.
Amazing. So this is really life-changing. This is really like shifting the foundation of how you operate in the world, which is honestly the biggest prosperity that anyone could have would be to find true centering and peace and live your life from that point.
I think so.
Cass, this has been so incredible. I could and I will talk to you for the rest of my life. Tell everybody how they could get in contact with you if resonance resonates with you, which, it should. If they'd like to, to go down the many rabbit holes that you've spoken of and brought up in this conversation, how can people connect with you, find you, work with you, be worked on by you, find out if they're a Pleiadian or a Syrian or a unicorn or a fairy or a goosebump? How can people get into contact with you?
I'm going to be opening up a course very soon that's going to be sharing all the basic fundamental methods that are based on testing so that you can understand the concepts, I guess, and then sharing my own version of how I create these fields. And then doing almost like a bit of a play where people get to deep dive into themselves, into testing as well, so that way they can get that for themselves. That's
Mm.
going to be coming out in a couple of weeks, but the Resonance website is how you can find out more about the actual project, and there are details there so you can contact me directly. I don't know how much capacity I have to do testing on unicorns for people, but I'm never one to say no to a really good challenge.
So bring your craziest ideas. But I mean, in a general, like the kinds of things that people should be or could be thinking about testing for that, just to make it clear, more, let's call it down the line, more available testing that's not so out there. What could they test for so they can contact you with those ideas?
Like streamline testing, I would say I do more corrections than I do testings now. So there's a method that I use where it's called timeline therapy, and that can be based on anything from a relationship where if you're with a partner that you've had many, a long period of time with them and you're feeling that there's stuckness with the timeline therapy and biogeometry, it clears any of the layers of energetic field that you've created with that person in partnership. And so that's one of the ways that biogeometry really helps to shift pattern. And that can be used on organ, or it can be used to shift some big things that block us as humans rather than testing straight away. I find that's a really good starting point. And then for testing things, I would say mainly testing things that we are doing regularly. So, like anything from TV programs that we're watching to meditations that we're doing to rituals. We can test the before of our energetic field to the after doing something and see how something has shifted, to then quantify the quality of what's happened when we've done that particular ritual or done that particular meditation or done that particular practice, so that way it's no longer just oh, that was really cool, like I felt like that did something. Now it's like, oh, this is exactly what it shifted for me, and that's empowering because then you feel
Mm.
like, oh, I want to keep doing that. And that's like another thing that I like to do is give people a practice and then get them to test the before and after.
But I love that as well, because there are so many trends and so many fads in all of these, Instagram, TikTok things that come up, and everybody, these creators like, do this and lose 1,000 kilos in 2 seconds, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna try that, right? And it might not be right
Mm.
for you, and it might have been right for that creator, but it might not be right for you. And if you're on a health journey, or a transformational journey, or some kind of like identity upgrade or shift or whatever, then you can actually go and test the one, like, you can try a variety of different things and then find the right protocols for you, or the right diet, or whatever it is, right? Like, you can actually test these things and not second guess yourself, hoping that, or wondering why you're not getting results, or then talk badly to yourself like, oh, I don't have enough motivation, or I'm not committed enough. It's like, no, that one doesn't work for you. That's not the correct thing for you. And that's just feels like huge weights could be lifted off people.
Yeah. I lost you for a second, but yes, absolutely. That's definitely it. No, I agree.
All right. So what's the Resonance website? And we'll link it below, but just for anyone who's listening who can't access the show notes.
Resonance, RESONAACE, resonance. I think that's how you spell
However you spell resonance.com.
no,
Okay.
resonance AUST. Yeah. A Resonance Australia.
Okay.
It's Resonance AU.
Cool. I'm glad we worked that out. And note to self, you're going to be going home and practicing how to spell resonance after this for all of your upcoming media events.
Oh, that's the best. I love it.
Okay. I'm glad you're back. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time and your energy and your frequency and your contribution to this world. Honestly, there are so many things that I could have interviewed you about in this conversation today. You are just one of these rare and beautiful women that shows up in the world and really is here to give so much in the life that you have. Not only have you created babies and future beautiful humans, but like, you are actually creating the world that you most want them to live in. And you're not just talking the talk, like, you're doing it, and you're out there every single day putting action behind the words and the vision that you hold. And you hold that vision so beautifully and so effortlessly and so calmly. And it's just effortless for women to want to step into the world that you're seeing and you're creating. And you move in this world with this inevitability of your success in creating these alternate options for people to actually come into these portals, for people to know who they truly are and operate differently. And you hold that just as you said, with this, just come or don't come, but we're doing it anyway. And you're invited if you join. And there's no hard feelings if you don't. And I think it's very rare to have someone who's so embodied in their vision for this world and holding it without any attachment, but also a level of non-attachment, but also detachment, so that it can grow as more and more people come into the energy of this. And, it's like, I will lead this, but I'm not the leader. We're all leading this. And that's a really rare and fine balance in terms of having enough ego to push it forward and knowing that you can, and not, and none at all to know that everybody's going to be the author of this and everyone's going to be the creator of this. And so, I just wanted to see you and acknowledge you for that extremely beautiful and mastered way that you hold a leadership function.
Blessing. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Cass.
much. Thank you for your job as well, holding space for this to come into life, because this isn't an easy topic. It's not something a lot of people have capacity to even talk about. So thank you for bringing that into this world, because it's definitely needed. So yeah, blessing.
We need to talk about it
Yeah.
every day. Let's do
Yeah.
it every day.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.